On Friday, September 2nd, Eliza Fletcher, a mother of two, began her day early. She went for a run near the campus of the University of Memphis at 4 a.m. This was not unusual, as Eliza was an avid runner who qualified for the Boston Marathon. At about 4:20, a dark-colored SUV drove past her, then stopped. As Eliza ran past the SUV, she was violently grabbed and dragged into the vehicle. The SUV eventually took off. When Eliza didn't return home, her husband called police. The search was on for Eliza, who not only was a school teacher, but an heiress to a billion-dollar family business. Investigators quickly recovered evidence from the scene of the abduction and found surveillance video showing them what happened. That evidence led them to arrest Cleotha Abston and recover the SUV. Then, just after 5 p.m. on Monday, September 5th, Eliza's body was recovered. Tonight, we take a closer look at the evidence in this tragic story and try to answer the most difficult question of all. Why? I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And tonight, we're talking about a story that is extremely tragic, but it involves two words that we say way too often. And when these two words are put together, it usually doesn't turn out well. Missing mom. How many times through the years have we uttered those words and then realized the results and saw what happened? And when I think of those two words together, missing mom, I think of a couple things. First, what happens to the children? What happens to the children? And here we're talking about young children. You know, you rely upon your mother for so much. And then all of a sudden, mom is missing. How do children deal with that? How do they handle that now and for the rest of their lives? The other part is the pain for a mother knowing or realizing at some moment that you're not going to be there for your children. That's the part we don't think about. To me, in a case like this, where you have worst case scenario results, at some point you know that is going through her mind. Her children. I'm not going to be there. Who is going to take care of them? How are they going to be okay? And here we are tonight. As I said, this story does not have a happy ending. But there's always two parts to these stories. One is when someone is missing, you want to find them. But sometimes when you find them, they're no longer alive. Now, what happened here was caught on camera. Much of what happened was caught on camera. That made things easier for investigators to put together some pieces and figure it out quickly. You know, within those first 48 hours, which are so important in an investigation like this. Doesn't give you the result that you want. And it, you know, what it does do though, is gives you an opportunity for an answer, an opportunity for evidence, and an opportunity to hold someone responsible. Again, there's video. It hasn't been released yet. But from what the reports say and the affidavits and everything else, it was a big part of this investigation and will be a big part of this case. What was captured on surveillance videos, and they're everywhere. And you would think people kind of know that these days, right? That people have cameras outside their homes. Towns and cities have cameras everywhere. Businesses have cameras. So if you're outside, it seems sooner or later you know you're going to get caught on camera. You would think. And you would think that would be a deterrent. But it wasn't in this case because, as I said, this was an absolute tragedy as investigators were able to track down what happened to Eliza and find her. And as I said, this is tragic on many, many levels. But for me, it comes back to what I started all of this with, is that at some moment in this struggle, in this abduction, in this attack, this mom had to be thinking about her children. And that's the cruelty that's involved in a case like this. That is the torture and the cruelty that she had to endure. Now let's talk about the person who got arrested. You know, there's going to be evidence about what they allege he did, how he allegedly did it, but why? Why would you do this? To what point? And here we're talking about someone who spent time in prison, decades in prison, and you get out, and that's where you want to go back to? I don't understand that. So this hour, we're going to try to understand that. First, though, we've got to go through this story, the evidence to figure out exactly what happened. And then at the end of this hour, we're going to try to talk about why. Why would someone do this? Especially someone who has spent time behind bars, locked up. Unreal. Here's the Memphis police chief talking about the discovery and the recovery of Eliza Fletcher.
Today is a very sad day in the city of Memphis. First, I'd like to express our sincere condolences to the family, friends, and numerous others who have been impacted by the tragic and heinous kidnapping of Eliza Fletcher. Yesterday evening, September 5th, at approximately 5:07 p.m., the Memphis Police Department and other law enforcement partners discovered the remains of a human body, in the rear of a vacant duplex apartment at the 1600 block of Victor Street. At that time, it was believed the unidentified body could possibly be the remains of kidnapping victim Eliza Fletcher. Further forensic investigation by the MPD traffic unit positively identified the body was, in fact, Eliza Fletcher. Cleotha Abston has been charged by MPD homicide investigators with the following state charges: first-degree murder in perpetration of kidnapping, especially aggravated kidnapping, and tampering with evidence. In addition, Abston has been charged with the following unrelated offenses: identity theft, theft of property, and credit card fraud. While the outcome of this investigation is not what we hoped for, we are nonetheless pleased to remove this dangerous predator off the streets of Memphis.
Remove him off the streets of Memphis again, I think is more correct. Again. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, joining us live tonight from the scene where Eliza's remains were found in Memphis, Tennessee. Chanley, great to see you tonight. What's the latest where you are? I can see some balloons over your right shoulder. Police investigators still there. What's going on?
The police investigators actually cleared this scene earlier this afternoon, Vinny. So I'm standing right now where the body of Eliza Fletcher was discovered yesterday by the Memphis Police Department. So this vacant house behind me is where the FBI led the investigation. You can see, of course, the memorial that's growing with balloons and teddy bears and flowers. It's here at the house. It's also on the street corner to my left. But according to the affidavit, Vinny, this house tipped off the investigators. They first talk about this tall grass that you see when the driveway ends. And of course, to my left, there were tire tracks in this grass, which led them to move towards the back of this home. Once you go to the back of the home to my left, there's another door with some steps like this behind me. According to the affidavit, they located the body of Eliza Fletcher on the other side of those steps, sort of concealed by the back of this house, some steps, and this very, very taller than me grass vacant lot to my left. I'm in South Memphis. This is where I'm located, the corner of Person Avenue and Victor Street, Vinny. And again, this was the site that the remains were located. I've been here most of today. A lot of community members are driving through this area because they know this is where she was found, so they're leaving, of course, the flowers, balloons. They just want to see what it looks like. I've talked to several of them. Most of them are saying just how shocked and disturbed that this happened in their hometown. I'm about to talk to a woman who's here now who said that she and her goddaughter drove around this area just searching while Miss Fletcher was missing for several days, had a hunch that something was happening in this area because that's where the suspect who had been arrested on Saturday lived close by. His brother did, Vinny, and they said they were really tipped off by the smell, this pungent smell, odor of decay, which, as I even stand here now, you can catch glimpses of that odor. It's just a very solemn, disturbing scene.
Absolutely. Well, let's start first by talking about the victim, Eliza Fletcher. What can you tell us about her? I spoke a lot in the top about her being a mother, and that was the first thing that caught my attention. Tell us about her.
Yeah, Vinny, she was a 34-year-old mother, devoted wife, a churchgoer. She was a kindergarten teacher at St. Mary's Episcopal School here in Memphis. She loved her classmates. Her school sent out statements today honoring her life, how heartbroken they are. Her family sent a statement, how heartbroken. Of course, the family is asking for privacy to grieve. She was someone known to sing to her students, so her school this morning sang This Little Light of Mine in honor of her during their chapel this morning.
14.
And when she went missing, this was something running. She did every morning, Vinny, when I was at the site of her abduction, which is about 20 minutes from here. I'll be there the next hour on your show to show you that. I ran into her neighbor who lives 3 doors down from where she lives with her 2 boys, and he was hanging a wreath at the intersection where she was abducted in the early morning hours on Friday morning. He said she would run every morning. That was her routine. She was training for the Boston Marathon. He told me that she was a, quote, amazing, amazing, amazing person. He told me to drive by her home, Vinny, because if you drive by her home, instead of the formal dining room in the front of her house, you see a playroom. You can see crafts hanging on the window. You can see a big sandbox that was out front, her front door. Instead of a flower bed, it's a sandbox. There's toys in the front yard. It just compounds the tragedy of this case, knowing that her priority, it seemed, was her students, of course, and her children, and her family, and her home.
Yeah, you talk about, we talk about school teachers all the time, right? And this is someone who, you have your own children and then all the kids at school as well who were like her children. Let's talk about now Friday morning and what happened and what we know about the timeline of events here. Well,
she was last seen around 4 a.m. at the intersection, again, about 20 minutes from where I am right now, on Central Avenue, the University of Memphis campus. So there's video surveillance there where the intersections are and around the campus. So that surveillance video showed after she was reported missing a black GMC Terrain passing through. The affidavit says it was waiting for around 24 minutes, allegedly trying to stalk a victim out. And then you see in this video a male exiting that GMC Terrain, running aggressively towards the victim is what the affidavit says, and forcing Eliza Fletcher into the passenger side of that SUV. And then the vehicle sits in a parking lot for about 4 minutes before it drives off. There's some distinguishable characteristics on that vehicle which helped police track down who owned it and who was driving it at the time. And we know, just for some distance on the map, we have where Eliza Fletcher was last seen, jogging, like I said, the University of Memphis campus. I was there today, very busy intersection part of town. Of course, she was there early, 4 or 5 a.m. And then we know in that area, a biker found her cell phone and a pair of Champion slide sandals. 1 pair of those sandals was found there. That was tested for DNA. that led them to the person that was arrested, Cleotha Abston, excuse me. And then, of course, where I am now is where Eliza Fletcher's body was located. That's about 7.5 miles away from where she was abducted here in this vacant lot.
Chanley, one fact I want to make clear tonight is are investigators saying he acted alone and that he was the driver of the vehicle as well? He drove it away after forcing her in?
That's right. According to the police affidavit, he is the sole person driving the vehicle. They were able to connect that vehicle to him. It wasn't in his name, but he drove it every day to work. He matched the description of the person on the surveillance video, and he was seen by witnesses, including his brother, cleaning this vehicle the next day, acting oddly, according to the affidavit. The affidavit goes on to say there's blood, traces of it, indicating a violent abduction is what the affidavit says in that vehicle. So there was no indication that anyone else was involved. In fact, in the press conference today that you played a part of, it was, they say, an isolated tragedy just committed by a stranger, act of violence on a stranger, Vinny.
Again, makes no sense to, normal people why any of this would happen. Let's talk about the defendant a little bit. What do we know about this defendant, his history, his past, his life, who he is, and what's going on there?
Yeah. He's someone that has an extensive criminal history. Vinny, you touched on this. He's 38 years old. He had been out of prison for about 2 years. Of course, he was arrested by the U.S. Marshals on Saturday when they connected it to that SUV seen in surveillance video. He was, at that time, only charged with kidnapping and tampering with evidence. That those charges have been upgraded. He will be arraigned again tomorrow on first-degree murder counts, but he spent 20 years behind bars, Vinny, for a previous kidnapping. When he was 16, kidnapped an attorney, put that attorney in his trunk and had, at gunpoint, had an accomplice with him, tried to get money out of his ATM. And this attorney, Kemper Durand, gave a victim impact statement when Mr. Abston, the defendant here, was sentenced back then. And in that statement, Mr. Durand talks about Abston's criminal history as a juvenile, and said in his testimony that he had prior run-ins for theft, aggravated assault with a weapon, and rape, according to Durand's statement. So this is someone that is very familiar with law enforcement and now will be behind bars. We're expecting the prosecutors tomorrow with the upgraded charge to ask for no bond. He's currently being held on $500,000 bond, Vinny, but with the upgraded charges, we're expecting the prosecutors to ask for no bond.
Chanley Painter live tonight at the scene where Eliza Fletcher, her remains were recovered. It's a crime scene. They've finished the investigation, but a lot of sadness tonight in Memphis. Chanley, thanks so much. I know we'll be speaking later on in the show. We've got a lot more to get to. We're going to bring in our investigators and take a look at some of this evidence and put some of the pieces together, and then ultimately try to look at why would you do this? Plus, coming up next hour. In Mesa, Arizona, the only living child of so-called doomsday cult mom Lori Vallow Daybell is arrested and charged with the rape of his estranged wife. What is going on in this family?
It's really hard. Seeing him, knowing he did it, and knowing everything about the truth, and just this whole process is really hard.
A senseless tragedy in small-town America.
This was a pre-planned execution.
It was a feud between families that ended with multiple murders.
Came in like thieves in the night and took 8 lives.
George Wagner faces murder charges in connection with the killing.
Wagner's brother and parents also charged.
It's very much a family affair. All for one, one for all.
It's a chilling story. It will be an intense trial.
The Ohio Family Massacre Trial. Live coverage coming soon on
Value Destination.
In contrast to whatever baseless speculation you might have seen, we have no reason to think this was anything other than an isolated attack by a stranger.
Isolated attack by a stranger, that's what they're saying, and that's what it looks like. We're talking, of course, about the murder of Eliza Fletcher in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to talk about some of the evidence in this case, so let me bring in my investigators first so we know who's on board tonight. Joining me in Jacksonville, Alabama, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, former senior investigator for the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office and the host of the Body Bags podcast. Joseph Scott Morgan is with us. In Atlanta, Georgia, former Memphis police officer and retired DEA Special Agent Ted Golden. And in San Diego, California, retired director of the San Diego Police Department Crime Lab, Jennifer Shen is with us. Great to see everyone tonight. I want to put the affidavit up on the screen so we can talk about some of the things that we've learned about this investigation. The search of Victor Street and East Person Avenue area. Officers noticed tire tracks in the grass adjacent to the driveway of the spot where Chanley Painter was tonight. Officers, just like Chanley tonight, smelled an odor of decay. Officers noticed a set of steps just north of the rear driveway. To the right of the steps, they located an unresponsive female lying on the ground. Search of the surrounding areas led officers to a discarded trash bag. The trash bag contained purple Lululemon running shorts that were consistent with the ones Eliza Fletcher was last seen wearing. So let's go through some of this evidence. First, I just want to go with the area where we're talking about. Ted Golden, DEA Special Agent, but also former Memphis police officer. Are you at all familiar with that area of Memphis?
South side of town, the South Precinct, where I did not work. But yeah, it's pretty well-known area where things do happen out of the ordinary from time to time.
Now, Joseph Scott Morgan, the odor of decay, and I'm sure all three of you can talk about this, but that odor of decay, we had the trial for the woman accused of murdering Kaylee Marie Anthony, and all of a sudden that wasn't a thing. Is it a real thing? When you smell it, do you know it?
Oh yeah, you know that some organic substance is beginning to break down, but you know, just as was proven in that case, that's bunk science. There is no test where we can say that there is
no test, but an experienced person, an experienced investigator.
Yeah. I mean, we do have our own suspicion. However, when you say odor of decay, it can mean any number of things. That's why we as investigators, when we go out to scenes, we're trying to be very careful, because you can also have smells from decaying animals that will smell similar, of course, and you want to be as thorough as you possibly can. And I got to tell you, Vin, just watching the efforts that the police put forward in this particular case, they spent a long time out at these scenes, taking their time. So I'm sure that was a finding that they will make note of, but there's a lot more to this case than simply a bad odor.
Jen Shen, what are your thoughts about that first scene that we're talking about tonight, where they found Eliza's remains? There was talk of tire tracks, and then she's lying on the ground outside. What are you looking for? What type of evidence are you going to collect there?
Well, once you discover the body and you have that evidence, what kind of wounds there were, how she died, you're then trying to connect any evidence from the scene to the person that put her there. So you do have a lot of evidence at the prior scene of the abduction that connects your suspect to the abduction itself, but now you're trying to get your connection between the suspect and where the body was located. The tire tracks are great for that. If you can connect it back to the vehicle, certainly they're going to be looking for shoe prints to see if they can connect that back to his shoes, and any biological material from the suspect himself. Clearly, anything that's there that helps identify the body is also very useful. But that's what you're doing, connecting person to place and place to crime.
Ted Golden, something that stuck out to me in this affidavit, the purple Lululemon running shorts were in a trash bag. And I'm wondering if that gets us closer to maybe figuring out what the motivation was in all of this. If it was just a straight up murder, abduction, I'm going to kill you, there's no reason for those shorts to be off.
Well, clearly he tried to cover his tracks. The shorts probably contained some DNA that he's going to be charged with later on, more than likely. And let me give kudos to the cops. They preserved the crime scene, noticed things unusual. Hopefully they didn't harm it too much. But when you can see them talk about those things, that make it very clear that a vehicle was here, that tracks are here, they're high grass and those kind of things. And I'll also add, I'm a University of Memphis alumni, so I know about the University of Memphis and the area where she was taken from. And it's unfortunate, but great job by the cops documenting the information, especially on the front end, because the more you can get before, when you discover the crime scene, the better it's going to be as far as an outcome is concerned.
Joseph Scott Morgan, what type of evidence you're going to be able to get from Eliza's remains if they were found on the ground outside? It took a couple days to find her, to discover her. You also have the shorts are missing. Will you be able to tell if there was some sort of sexual assault?
Perhaps. I keep hearing the terms violence and aggressive in a couple of statements that have been made thus far. I've also heard the term blood, which means to me that this is a violent act. So you're going to have points of contact along the continuum here, perhaps at the original scene where she was taken, particularly within this vehicle, because you can do things sequestered in a vehicle like this. And then finally, what I would term as a dump site on the backside of that building. Now, to your other question, relative to potential sexual assault, I got to tell you, if we find a lady like Eliza that is absent her clothing, that sends off bells and whistles for us, particularly in a homicide. That's pretty much standard fare for us to do a rape kit in any kind of case like this at post. So I can guarantee you, bet your bottom dollar that they're doing a rape kit, and they're going to be doing nail scrapings. They're going to be doing nail clippings. They're going to try to ferret out every bit of trace evidence that her body will offer up. And of course, we still have yet to find out what her cause of death is. And I'm waiting to find out what that is. Whatever it is, it's going to be quite brutal, I think.
Jen Shen, what are they doing with those shorts at the crime lab?
Well, they're going to be looking for any evidence of his, body fluids on them, semen, blood, etc. But I did want to say that, this crime in particular it's classic. It's very classic for today's day and age. So the two things is, number one, the videos. That there are videos, as you say, everywhere. And now on the homicide scenes now, that's the first thing they do. They go out, they canvass all the different buildings, they pull all the video, we send out our people and they download everything, and then they go through everything to see what information they can find. And the second thing is to look for where DNA and stuff left behind at the scene. There's nothing better than a hat or a shirt or shoes or something that has someone's DNA in it. If you can tie the evidence to the scene itself, you can analyze it and run the DNA in a database and get a name. And so the two things that we want so badly in homicide investigations these days are those two things, and they had them both. And it just made this case, come together so quickly. So it was just really interesting to see that.
Extremely quick. And sometimes we're covering a lot of cold cases on this show. We're covering mysteries, cases that have not been solved. This one looks like it's solved. We're going to have more on the investigation. Our guests are staying with us. Joseph Scott Morgan, Ted Golden, Jen Shen. We'll be right back.
The Marshal Service has a very unique relationship with the Memphis Police Department. At any time they call, we're there to assist. We were glad to receive their call on Saturday when a suspect had been identified. We then went about finding the suspect vehicle in question, as well as the suspect himself. He was spotted, the vehicle was spotted in the apartment complex, and we also conducted surveillance on him. And then when he tried to make a move, we went in and made the arrest safely and took him into custody and turned him over to the custody of the Memphis Police Department.
U.S. Marshals working with Memphis police in this case, working together very well. in making an arrest for the murder of Eliza Fletcher in Memphis. Still with me, Joseph Scott Morgan, Ted Golden, Jennifer Shen. Ted, I want to ask you, former Memphis police officer, but you're a former DEA special agent. How about this cooperation between the feds and the locals in putting all this together?
The U.S. Marshals Service has a fantastic system set up. If you commit a crime and they've got any inkling of information on you, they're going to get you. And they're very efficient about what they do. I've supported them in the past here in Atlanta, providing them data when they were looking for someone to kill a police officer many years ago. The Marshal Service, they have unbelievable techniques and ways of locating defendants. I don't want to give them up, but they're very efficient, very effective, and sometimes within hours or even a few short days, they're able to locate suspect anywhere in the continental United States and sometimes even in the world.
I want you to take a look at more information from the affidavit. Jen Shen, this is what you were talking about. This is at the scene of the abduction. Champion slide sandals found with the victim's cell phone at Central and Zach H. Curlin Street. Champion slide sandals sent to TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, for DNA testing. DNA from those sandals matched the defendant in this case in the CODIS database. Seemed to happen pretty quickly. What is that process like, Jen?
Well, it can be done very quickly, particularly if you're just using a small number of items of evidence. If you know exactly what you want tested, you can turn around DNA results in 24 to 48 hours at the longest. So it's actually something that can be done very quickly. And there are several things that happened here that were really good. You have to be able to connect the evidence to the crime scene, or you can't use whatever DNA you get from that item and put it in the database. So in this case, because her phone was there, they had the video showing that this is where the crime occurred and the slides were found right there. Any DNA they got was absolutely appropriate for putting into a database. And you had someone who was already in there because they'd already been arrested. They'd already been in the system. So those things were just all absolutely so important to come up with a name so quickly.
Joseph Scott Morgan, let's talk about the car, the vehicle, the SUV here. Here's a witness stated that she saw the defendant cleaning the interior of the GMA Terrain with floor cleaner and stated he was behaving oddly. This was later confirmed by the defendant's brother, who stated that he too saw the defendant cleaning the interior of the car with floor cleaner. Both witnesses saw the defendant washing his clothes in the sink of the house. Okay. He's cleaning up the GMA. What are you going to be able to find, and what can it tell you about what happened inside that car?
Well, one of the ways that, it's kind of the framing of this when we talk about an event that may have taken place in a vehicle or in a home like this, you'll hear us talk about copious amounts of blood. And that means a large amount of blood. And one of the things, and you can't really put a volume to it necessarily, but one of the things you can kind of look at and say, is this incompatible with life? Say, for instance, if you had a copious amount of blood in this vehicle, which I can guarantee, I don't care how much he scrubbed, he didn't get it all up. All right, they found blood. All right, if that's what they were going for, and I imagine that's the case. But if you have a large stained area that might be consistent with a large blood loss, this is key to this case because you're trying to marry up a timeline to determine how soon after she was snatched. Jen had mentioned kind of the timing here relative to phone information, and of course we got CCTV. How soon after that did she meet her end? Is there a possibility that she did die inside of that vehicle, and then where her body was eventually found was just a location that he chose to obscure the body, to keep it out of plain view where no one would see it? And that's going to be key. This vehicle is going to be massive in this case. And one other thing that I have to tell you that just kind of struck me, I was watching some videotape images that were rolling in. I think this was on Saturday. For the first time, I saw a dumpster being flatbedded out of a location. And to me, that's significant. That means that somebody's going to have the dirty job. Nobody wants to draw that straw, but you're going to go through that dumpster piece by piece and recover every bit of evidence that you think might be tied back to this case.
Ted Golden, as Chanley Painter reported to us, and investigators are saying, they're saying he acted alone, that he was alone. He was able to grab her, get her into the GMC, and then drive away. So what does that tell you about what could have happened inside the GMC Terrain?
Number one, she fought for her life. She fought hard. And number two, he's a predator. He's not just a suspect. He's a predator. He's one of those folks that do this for a living all day, all night. That's all he thinks about is doing stuff like this. You know, we know that the people like him are responsible for multiple more crimes than they get caught doing. So he's done this before. He knows how to handle his business. He was very heinous in how he did it. And he had no intention of releasing her in the first place. And he said he stalked her, basically, and waited for the opportunity. And he probably beat the holy hell out of her inside that truck in order for him to be able to drive away without her having, subdued him herself and gotten away.
Jennifer Shen, your thoughts about floor cleaner? Like a lot of times in these cases, we hear about bleach being used to try to clean up a crime scene. How about floor cleaner? How much damage can that do to the scene for investigators?
Well, I mean, it can definitely do some damage, but, the point is, if there was a lot of blood, then it's going to get down in the cracks and the crevices and under the floor mats or, in the scenes or somewhere that you don't, unless you absolutely drown the car in floor cleaner, you're not going to get it all. So there's going to be enough to connect any blood found to our victim. The other thing I want to say about that vehicle that's so important is it connects the original abduction to where the body was found. I mean, you have to, how did the body go? How did the victim go from one place to another? And when you have the ability to put her into that car physically, then you have everything all tied up to be able to present to a jury. So it's important for that reason as well.
A great investigation and great corroboration as well. Great job tonight. Joseph Scott Morgan, Ted Golden, Jennifer Shen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you're all busy. Your time is valuable, and we do absolutely appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to try to answer that question, why, and also let you know about this coming up next hour. And on the docket tonight in Miami, Florida, Instagram and OnlyFans model Courtney Clenny back in court, charged with the murder of her boyfriend, who she made explicit videos with on her pay-for website.
Any contact that I've had with media outlets has been to push back against a false narrative that's being put out there. And that's well within our right.
Actually licensed everything.
Any kind of violence, of course, is unacceptable, but repeat violent offenders particularly deserve a strong response, and that's what they'll get from this district attorney's office. We will continue to cooperate with law enforcement and work closely with them, as we already have, so that we can do our best to bring justice to this tragic situation.
Repeat violent offender. This is someone who served decades in prison, gets out and does all of this and is locked up again? Why? Why? Let me bring in my guest. Joining me in Los Angeles, California, forensic psychiatrist, trial expert witness, and columnist of Inside the Criminal Mind, Dr. Carol Lieberman is with us. Dr. Lieberman, great to see you. Let me put up on the, I want to put some information from a news report so folks have a little more background about this defendant, and then I'll ask you to try to answer that question for me tonight, why? In June of 2000, this defendant kidnapped a lawyer at gunpoint. He was forced into the trunk of his car before being forced to drive to a gas station to withdraw money from an ATM. The defendant was charged with aggravated robbery, especially aggravating kidnapping, and was sentenced to 24 years in prison. His lengthy history in the juvenile system prior to his conviction for the kidnapping dated back to 95 when he was no older than 12 years old. Take me inside that mind. Why would someone who spent 20 years in prison gets a second chance, maybe it's a third or fourth or fifth chance, whatever, and then just goes out and commits an even worse crime?
Yes. Well, first of all, the key is with the first crime that he committed, or the one that he was charged with first in any case, the arrest at 12 years old for rape and assault. Now, you know, for a 12-year-old child to commit rape and assault and be arrested for it, what that shows is, first of all, that he comes from a very violent home. The home overstimulates him sexually. There is something sexual going on in there that is inappropriate. And it also says, because it's a rape, it also says that he has a bad relationship with his mother. And it also says that there is no morality in his home. And, you know, he then, when he was 16 years old, is when he had this kidnapping of the attorney. So this is a man who really, from a very, very young age, had these sociopathic, antisocial habits, you know, frame of mind drummed into him because of where he grew up. And, you know, it's interesting that the kidnapping is interesting because there's the question of whether this was a random crime, you know, a crime of opportunity. Was he just in his car and he saw a woman, an attractive woman running in the middle of the night, you know, and so, did that sort of reactivate his impulses? I mean, that's possible. But the kidnap was of this man, Kemper Durand, who worked in a law office where Elizabeth Fletcher's uncle worked. So there is this possibility that there is a more complicated connection, you know, that she wasn't a random attack, but that it had something to do with this, for the same reason why he kidnapped the man at 16.
You know, the other part of this is the reports are that he was there like for 24 minutes, kind of lying in wait.
Right.
That tells me there may be some level of planning here, or why else would he be up at 4 o'clock in the morning driving around this neighborhood?
Yes. Now, I mean, there were some attacks on the cross-country team of the university. So there was a theory that, well, you know, maybe he was the person who had been attacking some of these previous people or lying in wait for these previous girls who were going by. But I think that, you know, this connection to the uncle is maybe that's a red herring, but it certainly is something that needs to be explored. You know, going to the morality aspect of it that I mentioned and the issues with his mother, you know, his mother is now hiding. She's in communication, or was, with his uncle, but she told his uncle she doesn't want to have anything to do with this. And the only thing that she cares about, you know, what makes her she's okay, except for the fact that she doesn't like the media trying to, and I guess the authorities, you know, the police, trying to get in contact with her. Otherwise, she's okay. Now, can you just think about that? You know, no apparent caring about the woman who died. I just don't want to be bothered with this, is what she said.
Unbelievable. Incredibly tragic again for Eliza Fletcher, but it seemed like this was a ticking time bomb, this guy,
yes,
after being let out. I mean, he grew up in prison, basically. Dr. Carol Lieberman, always great to get your insight. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.